Awesome. Hello, guys. Hope you're all well. Tonight, Middlesex University Product Design Engineering, and Design Engineering are really excited to host the third talk in our annual guest lecture series, which runs weekly throughout the course of the academic year, and bringing together a vibrant mix of speakers from the full spectrum of design and engineering, alongside a mix of leading practitioners, opinion leaders, radical thinkers, and emerging talents to inspire and support both your professional development alongside the professional development of staff as well. Tonight, we're really excited to host Adam Shaw, the Heart Guy, with a talk titled Business Funding and Mental Health, How to Attract Both. Details of Adam and the talk as well were sent to your emails ahead of the talk, including links to Adam's social media pages, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, alongside the website as well. So feel free to connect with Adam online, alongside, check out his YouTube channel and other features as well on his website. Adam has a really interesting and diverse background. It was fascinating when Talk Vidas first shared this with me. He worked previously in banking and also in nursing as well, before leaving the NHS to set up his own business. And now he helps business owners to position themselves to attract funding, alongside looking after their mental health. So like Adam mentioned, first and foremost, the conversations normally start off with the business side, right? With attracting funding, seeking funding, advices for funding, alongside the mental health as well. So Adam's background is really diverse and rich, and we're really looking forward to this talk today. And Adam, it's all yours.
Well, thank you. That's always a bonus, isn't it? Where do I begin? So why interested in mental health? Well, I guess I should start at the beginning there. My parents were both psychiatric nurses. So when I was less than 1 year old, I was moved into the staff accommodation where my parents lived, in a bona fide lunatic asylum back in the 1970s, where political correctness hadn't quite made it to sunny Hertfordshire. So I grew up in that environment where patients used to come down knocking on our doors, some of them in their 90s, looking for cigarettes. It was very interesting playground to grow up in. So I've always had a fascination with what makes people mad, what makes people, what leads people to that. So that was a natural curiosity from a young age. Fast forwards 20 odd years, I ended up, actually just before that, my first main career was banking, where I spent 2 years. I realized that wasn't for me. It certainly wasn't the thing. And then I went back to university after taking a few years out, and I studied nursing. So that was at Middlesex. I did my nursing degree, came out of that, and did 13 years as a qualified nurse. And I had a great interest in travel. My main focus wasn't really on career progression. It was about having fun and enjoying life. So nursing really facilitated that for me. So I used it as a tool, because it was great to travel as a nurse. So I was able to travel to America and work as a nurse over there. I was able to travel to Australia and work as a nurse over there. So that career choice proved really useful when I was backpacking and seeing the world. So I did a lot of travel, been to about 30 countries over, and spent probably best part of 6 years overseas, either living or working or backpacking or traveling or seeing the world, having adventure, having fun, getting out there. So that was really where it all started. I'd come back to the UK, I'd work intensively, usually do some night shifts for about 9 months, and then I'd get a one-way ticket to a random destination. So those destinations took me to Australia, Southeast Asia, South Africa, South America, went to Brazil. And I've had 5 or 6 trips to the USA, including one where I did a road trip from the East Coast to the West and back again. So I've done a good bit of traveling along the way. And after 13 years of nursing, I decided I was seeing a few things that I didn't like. I was becoming, increasingly upset with the management because some bad management decisions were being made and it was costing some people their lives. And I was getting increasingly, how shall I say, my voice was getting increasingly loud in pointing out these things that were going wrong. And I realized that this was a profession where I really needed to get out. So I sort of jumped before I was pushed. And that left me in my early, my mid 30s, really sort of lost because I'd spent my whole life in jobs. And I left the job without really having a backup plan. And so I had to go down the School of Hard Knocks route into business. And all sorts of interesting things have happened since the business venture started. And I've worn different hats. So I started off as a well-being consultant. That was my main thing. I started out there. I was positioning myself that I can predict the early warning symptoms of heart disease and cancer and things like that. And I wasn't very good at marketing. So, and the other aspects of running a business, I didn't know anything about them. So it was a School of Hard Knocks route that I had. And what was really interesting is after about 2-3 years of that, I just had enough. I'd had so many meetings, so many conversations. I wasn't making the business work, and I just had enough of people asking me to meetings, and I was giving them health advice, and then of course they weren't taking it up, and I wasn't selling it particularly well. So I was a bit disenchanted, shall we say. And my fortunes changed one day where I just had enough. I thought, you know what, enough's enough. And I was giving free talks. I gave a lot of free talks on well-being. And one day I was asked to give a free talk at a multi-level marketing pitch, and why they chose to bring me in as a well-being speaker when people were there to find out how to make money, I don't know. But when I was introduced to the front of the room, nobody was listening. Half of the people were outside of the room. The other half of the people were inside of the room, but talking. So when I was up there ready to talk, nobody was ready to listen. And I just remember standing at the front of the room thinking, what am I doing? I've had enough. So I told everyone in the room, I thought, right, I need to do something different. And you'll find this in business. There'll always be a point where you realize if what you're doing isn't working, you need to change something. And for me, what I changed was the complete energy of what I was doing. And I told people at the front of that room, is there anyone here that's been stuck in a conversation with somebody that they didn't want to be with, and they wanted a technique to get out of it instantly? And straight away after asking that question, suddenly a lot of the room were giving me their attention. I said, it's groundbreaking. It will change your life, this technique. It will get you out of any situation that you don't want to be in instantly. And it's scientifically proven. And what happened was people started paying attention now. And this was the first time, because I'd gone a little bit left field on the conversation. So to cut this story short, I had the undivided attention of the whole room. And I told, when it got down to it, I told them the technique was to just cluck like a chicken. And I had the whole room clucking like chickens, and it proved to be the most engaging, one of the most successful talks that I'd given. People were completely engaged. They were laughing. They weren't even there to hear for it. And when I handed around the list and said, if anyone wants to sign up to my newsletter, leave your name and email, usually about 10 to 20% would leave their names. I had over 90% of the room leave me their name and email after that talk. So I learned something by changing it, by doing things differently, by being myself, completely left field. I'd engaged my audience, and it turned out there was somebody in the crowd there, and we were down in South London now, that lived less than 200 yards from me, back up in Hertfordshire. I was living in St Albans at the time. So we got chatting. I went round to visit him afterwards. While we were in that room and I was talking to him, an entrepreneur walked in, and he walked up the stairs and said straight away to me, "What do you do?" Now that's a question that I really don't like. You know, when people are asking you what you do before they know who you are, it just rubs me up the wrong way. So I facetiously said, I make people cluck like chickens. And he said, well, how does that work? And I showed him a little video that I'd recorded of that conversation. He said, I like you, let's go to the pub. So we went to the pub. We had a ridiculous amount of alcohol. And I was telling him that I was a well-being consultant at the time. So after leaving the pub with a big, terrible amount of alcohol, waking up the next day with a big hangover, he phoned me up and said, do you want to meet for coffee? And while I was having the coffee, I said, I think me and you could work together. And he said, well, how much do you need? I hadn't even thought of that. I hadn't been looking for funding. I hadn't even thought about funding, but I got offered funding on the back of a night in the pub and a chicken video. I'd no business plan, I'd no pitch deck, I'd no executive summary. I didn't really have much of an idea, but I managed to find myself an investor who, like me, who invested in a business that didn't exist. And that started pretty much my funding journey. So Ibrahim is in there. I make people cluck like chickens. It's definitely, I think people can zone out of conversations. In this day and age, people's attention span is shorter than it's ever been before. And if you go on and you drone on about the same things and talk about yourself for too long, people will just zone out. So saying something like, I make people cluck like chickens, it grabs people's attention again. It's a little soundbite. It differentiates you. It allows your personality to come across. And that's a massive part of what I'm going to tell you today. Don't let anyone tell you what you have to do. Or yes, there'll be certain ways you can structure yourself, but keep your core personality. That is your uniqueness. I'd made the mistake. I listened to a lot of people up until then tell me this is how a good speech goes. This is what you have to do. Make it, structure it like this. I was listening to everyone else's advice, and before I knew it, I'd lost who I was. And it wasn't until I'd reached that point of, I was just so fed up with everything that I thought, I might as well just be me. And that's when the chicken thing came out. It was unplanned. I hadn't scheduled it. I hadn't practiced it. It just came out. And it's how I got funded, ultimately. It was the chicken video. So that's how I entered the world of funding. Complete luck, total accident. And as it turned out, my business partner was the son of a lord. So I'd gone from no business, no clients to walking around and entertaining guests in the House of Lords within the stage of just a couple of months. So my fortunes changed and it opened me up to a different world. So there lieth the most important lesson. It's great to be intelligent. It's great to have an education. It's great to be able to show people that you can study and you can learn and you can get certificates. But in business, it's who you know. And it's your capacity to build relationships that will be more important than any other skill that you have. And even if you get off to a slow start, even if you don't get the best grades, even if you don't, nail it or go to the most prestigious, get the most prestigious degrees, if you meet the right people and you are yourself and you come across and they like you, then it will go a long way in the world of business. So knowing the right people, being able to connect with people, being yourself and getting on with it, that's really, really important in the world of business, and it's definitely important in the world of funding. So just before I go on, it'd be really interesting to hear from anyone here, if you can just put in the chat group, if any of you actually have a business idea or you've got something that you think might be fundable, or you just want an idea on it. If there's anyone, so we got one, there we go. So there's Farhad. So if you tell me, can you summarize in a sentence or two exactly what it is that you're doing? So, and I don't know, Ahmed, if there's a facility to unmute people, because if anyone's got a business idea on here and you want to pitch it to me, I will give you some feedback on what I think works and what I think how you could tweak it or maybe improve it. So that's good, or even positioning it. So that's good. Julian has already got the business. That's phenomenal. Well done.
Well,
That's
hi,
great.
Julian. If you wanted to type it in, feel free to type it in. If you wanted to unmute yourself and interact live, feel free to do that as well.
Well, this is it. I want this to be interactive. I mean, there's nothing more boring than me just talking about myself for an hour. You don't really want that, and I don't really want to do that to you. So, if there's anyone here that wants that has any questions, that's got anything about fundraising or mental health or positioning themselves or building relationships, then by all means, let's have a chat. Let's make it relevant to where you are. Because these days, what I do is I help people to position themselves to attract investment. But it's the same thing. It's about how to take your big business idea, and make it so succinct that when you pitch it, you do it in a way that keeps the interest of a potential investor or a client. And the big danger that a lot of people have is they talk too much. They give too much information and they lose the key thread. So I'm always interested to hear how people position themselves and their business, and maybe to give them little hints on what they can do to improve that. So that's a really good question from Touts there, that how do you create deeper relationships in a corporate people environment? Well, that really is just about consistency. It is about consistency. There'll be some people in business that you meet that you actually like as people. And I find that common interests outside of business are a really good way to get people talking. So, for example, I always thought, having all of my background in health and well-being, of being a nurse, it didn't really position me very well for the world of business. And then I got into business, and people would want to know my background. I'd mention nursing. And what I found was that people would open up about things that had happened with either their own health and well-being or stuff that's happened with their family. So we were in a big bank pitching once. We had a project that was going to sort of revolutionize cancer treatment, and we were trying to get that project funded, and it wasn't going very well at all. And I could see people were switching off. My business partner was doing most of the talking, and I could see that people weren't really that interested. And so I thought, well, is this relevant to people? You have to find out what interests the people that you're talking to. And so I said, well, have any of you ever had, a really close family relative that's ever had cancer? And as soon as one of the women in that room said, well, yes, my dad's just died of cancer. Then we opened up. I was on my home territory. I can talk about stuff like that all day and offer advice and help. And it wasn't anything to do with the pitch or the business. This is about connecting as a human being. I've been a lifelong Liverpool fan for football, and I find that talking about football is a great way to, find commonality, to start a bit of banter, so that it's not all about business. My experience of business meetings is about 95% of it is talking about other stuff. And we get really to the point to find where the commonality is on the business at the end of that chat. And that all revolves around, does this person like you or not? So if the person likes you, they're far more likely to do business with you. And there's a thing that says when people are like each other, they like each other. So if we both have an interest in football, that's a commonality. If we have a common interest in travel, that's a commonality. So you're looking to connect with people about the stuff they do in their free time that really interests them, their passion, things that they're passionate about and love to talk about. If you find out what other people are really, really, truly interested in, then you're far more likely they'll want to spend time with you, because now you've got them on their passion point. And if you can tie that in with the business angle as well, that's even better. That's a skill that I would suggest everybody would do well to learn. So here's Lizzie. I've seen a question here. I'm looking to take a year out traveling. Would you have any general advice? Oh, wow, Lizzie. I would definitely, my one piece of advice is do it. Absolutely do it, do it, do it. I think everybody, I think it should actually be mandatory that people should have to take some time out and see a bit of the world before they go into business. I personally think it's tragic. People that come straight out of school or university and go straight into a job and they never have that time to explore, to see the world. It really opened my eyes traveling, especially to some places in rural Africa and South America, Southeast Asia. It makes you realize that the world as we know it is very, very different to what we think it is. So what would I say? Well, what did I do? My first trip away, I went and worked in an American summer camp. That was my first. I left banking. I did go straight into a job. I went straight into a job. I worked in a restaurant and then I worked in a bank in the city. Now, in the bank in the city, I got really bored. I could see how if I stayed there, I would have made a lot of money, which would have made my family very happy. They were delighted that I got that job, but I felt like my soul was dying each time I had to go in there. So I knew it wasn't for me. I knew this wasn't a career that I wanted to go into. So I handed in my notice after I'd got signed up to an American summer camp, and I had the most phenomenal summer, meeting people from all over the world, traveling around America afterwards, seeing things. It was my first ever real trip away with no family or friends. It was just me on my own on a one-way adventure, and it was phenomenal. And it doesn't matter where you go. I know people do kibbutz. It might just be around the world ticket, just go backpacking, go hosteling, have an adventure around the world. I mean, I've had so many. I could almost have a business blog on my travel experiences. That could easily have been something that I'd have done. But I absolutely recommend it to all of you to get out and have fun with your life, to enjoy it, to do something wild, to do something that sort of scares and excites you. Yeah, everyone needs to have that in their life. I cannot recommend that highly enough. So let's have a little look here. What have we got? Same as this. So hello, Tom. Yep, same advice to you, fella. Farhad wants to propose his business idea. Well, let's do that. Let's do it. Start a plastics recycling business. Recycling plastic to turn it into crude oil and synthetic diesel by pyrolysis. Well, that sounds interesting, and it's not the first time I've heard that idea either, Farhad. So I don't know. Can we get Farhad on? Why do you want to tell us a little bit more about it? Because this sounds really interesting, and not only that, but this sounds like something that does a bit of good in the world. It has been.
Hi, Adam.
Let's do it. Hello.
Hi. So I was thinking about this pyrolysis business. Basically, it turns plastic back into crude oil, and it doesn't matter on which type of plastic it is. You can use any type of. And in countries like East Asia, Southeast Asia, from India, where I am, there is a place called Deonar, which has like 132,000 square kilometer of dumping yard full of rubbish and this thing, which could be actually a good point of business to like use the plastic from that area, use it into like make it diesel. And I've done some research and it shows that the synthetic diesel is quite better than normal diesel which we use right now. So I see a good opportunity in doing business over there. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's certainly a market there. There is technology that does that already, Farhad. So what I'm going to say to all of you, if you've got a business proposition, you'll always be asked, what is your unique selling point? And I ask most businesses that are looking to raise money, what is truly unique about your business? And it's incredible how many people can't really answer that, because they'll say things like, well, we look after our customers, or we're looking to, cure poverty, or we're looking to give back to charity. But there's always other businesses that do stuff like that. Finding something truly unique is really, really difficult.
The uniqueness about the business I want to do back in India is there is no recycling management project over there already existing. So it's like I would be the first person to start that thing on a major scale or something. So it's like the first one in the market, you can get a load range of people working with you and you can actually grow up more. Yeah.
So tell me more, Fahad, are you looking to create the technology to facilitate that, or are you looking to take an existing technology and just get it over to India?
I'm looking for taking the existing technology, but making it like more sustainable and it's like more advanced. The technology over there, which do the pyrolysis, it's like dated back like 5 or 10 years old. So I want to do it in a way which I can like make more crude oil over there at like a very fraction of the cost which people normally do it. Yeah.
Well, it's great. I mean, that's going to start, I mean, what you'll need to start considering is who are you going to partner with? So which are you going to actually create your own technology, or work with somebody that's got it and help to improve it for them to join their team? Is this going to be your own business? Are you going to do this? Are you going to be the man who just connects? I mean, there's definitely business opportunities for somebody who's well connected. So if you've got contacts over in India, decision makers that have got the power, the spending power to implement the measures that you're talking about, then you could make a very good living by just being the deal maker, the connector, the person that puts the two parties together, by bringing in, you know, people that are already doing this that may not have any of their technology in India, by opening up other countries for them. There's opportunities there. So this is about not reinventing the wheel. I mean, if your main interest is improving the technology, then be clear that that's what it's about. But if it is to make money and to help India, then it may be that there's technology there ready and raring to go, and you just need to open the door to sell it to other people. Now, most businesses are more than happy to pay commissions to people to go out and sell their technology or what their service offers. So you don't need to start your own business. Your business may just be connecting or selling or putting all of the dots together. So thinking more globally, thinking more expansively, thinking about who do I need to connect with? Who are my natural allies? How am I going to distribute these products? Who do I need to talk to? And there's a lot of good businesses with good ideas. They're good ideas, but they're created by scientists who aren't necessarily good people. So they've got great technology, but they don't have the relationships, and they are unable to open the doors or position themselves in a way where other people are buying it. Now, you may be a good salesperson. If you're a good salesperson, you don't need to start your own business. You could just have your business as a sales consultant, and you could make a lot of money in that field without having to invent anything, without having to really to go into the nuts and bolts of creating a new business. I mean, sales is something that's really, really important, and also positioning. You know, some people have great ideas, but they talk too much or they don't explain it clearly. Now, with whatever business opportunity you have, some people, they are guilty of using terms or acronyms that nobody outside of their industry understands. So I use these terms from my nurse background, because I used to come in and listen to people talk about, you know, it's a SaaS platform, or it does this. And, you know, I was hearing all these terms and acronyms that meant nothing to me coming from a nurse background. And so to make the analogy, I would say to them, well, I could talk to you about the patient I worked with who had a left-sided CVA with a right-sided hemiplegia, also with a UTI and raised U's and E's. Now, if you're in the nursing medical profession, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But to anyone outside of the profession, that means nothing, probably, unless you've had close experience or a friend or family with that. Or I could say, I could translate it, I could simplify it and say, this patient's had a stroke with a right-sided weakness, and they've got a urine infection. And their blood results are showing that the infection's definitely getting worse. So that's the translation of all that nonsense that I just told you. And a lot of people don't simplify. If they're in technology, they use terms or acronyms. The investor may want to invest in technology, but doesn't understand the technology sector. So it's your job to simplify the language and make it universal. And that is a gift in itself that most people don't do. people from banking, people from technology, from the IT sector, from medical research. They often lose their audience or their target audience because they cannot speak a universal language or simplify what it is that they do. You don't get any prizes for using fancy terms or acronyms that nobody understands. In fact, the only people that understand those terms are your competition. So it's also counterintuitive. Get used to simplifying what you do in a way that it's either the granny test or a 10-year-old kid will understand it. If a 10-year-old kid cannot understand what you do, then you've made it far too difficult. That's a good sort of rule to go by when you're pitching, when you're going for investment, or even when you're talking about your own business. And keep it short, keep it snappy, keep it interactive, and you're far more likely to get people to want to know more. So that's one of the things. Let's see what else we've got here. So did traveling, this is a good question by Luigi, did traveling help in terms of mental health? And before I go on to that, sorry, I meant to ask, Farhad, did that answer your question, or did that give you what you needed, or is there anything else you wanted to wanted me to expand upon there?
I just wanted to know, like, what could be the best way to like raise fund for that thing? If I want to take that technology over there, then I could say like I'm considered a good salesman, but still I would like to like know where should I start it from.
It depends what your strategy is, Farhad. If it is to open up those markets, to open the doors, you need to connect with the decision makers. And to do that, you need to start exercising your network. Get on LinkedIn. That's a fabulous resource for connecting with CEOs. You know, in this day and age, you are so lucky. It's possible to go direct to the people right at the top. But how you approach them is really important. Because if you go in talking about yourself and how wonderful your technology is and not doing your homework, not making the language appropriate to them, not knowing what their interests are, not doing, do your homework. If you're looking to connect with the top CEO of a global company, find their blog, read about what they're interested in, go on their profile on LinkedIn, follow their posts, see what they're currently interested in, and then relate what you want to that, so that you're captivating them and you're talking about things that are interesting to them. Because what I've noticed is the big mistake, especially with funding, people go to funders who are getting, hundreds of funding requests every week, some of them, and they just talk. They just vomit information without pre-qualifying whether people are interested in it. So keeping it short and succinct and making sure that you speak the language that investors want to hear, rather than what you think that they need to hear. And this is the want-need thing that we talked about at the beginning. What you want to tell them isn't necessarily what they want to hear. What they need to hear is the financials. They need to know, whether there's any traction, whether this business actually has a business case, or whether it's just a good idea. And you need to formulate that in your head. And as a PS, what I will say, I was going to leave this till the end, but I will say it now. If any of you have got a business proposition, you'll need to simplify it into a one-pager, an executive summary that keeps it really simple, that a 10-year-old would understand. And if any of you want any feedback on that, then you're more than welcome to send it to me, and I'll give you some feedback. I'll let you know what I think works and what doesn't. So that's an offer I'll make to all of you on this call. If you want me to give you feedback on your one-page summary of either your funding opportunity or what your business is, then I'm happy to do that for you. Okay, so next one. This is Luigi, did traveling help in terms of my mental health? Well, I have to say yes to that. Yes, it did. I mean, there were times it didn't, because when you travel, you never know what to expect. There were some really interesting times where my mental health would have been challenged in the other direction. I mean, especially when you wander into the wrong place and somebody suddenly points a gun at you that's loaded. I mean, those things aren't necessarily quite so good for your mental health, but it's all about your life experience as well. It makes, I guess, life a little bit more interesting when you do open yourself up to these weird and wonderful things that might happen to you. or when you're on a tour and you're going swimming, and then you suddenly notice they've taken you into a creek where there's crocodiles. And yeah, I learned then, A, that I can swim a bit faster than I thought I would, and B, I've never been quite so enthusiastic to go swimming since. Always check or have a look around, and it's easy to take unnecessary risks when you're out backpacking, but having a degree of reckless abandon or being open to that, I mean, for me, it formulates some of my best experiences ever. Meeting other people, seeing the world, seeing how the rest of the world lives, and realizing that, especially growing up in a first world country, that we don't really know how the rest of the world operates, or how they struggle, or how they live, or what real poverty is. It made me appreciate what I had back in the UK a lot more, through traveling to third world countries and places where real poverty is apparent. So it's changed my perspective on life. So yes, it has helped in terms of my mental health, because it made me a lot more appreciative of what I have over here. Even when things are going badly, we're still in a very good place compared to what people or other people around the world have to cope with. So yes, I cannot recommend this enough. Get out, see a bit of the world before you really settle down into what you're going to do. I would recommend it to everybody. Absolutely.
And on the topic of mental health, a question from Basima, wondering what you think about the mental health of students graduating and then the stress of finding a job.
Well, that is definitely a factor, because I think there's a lot to be said. I've personally worked with students that have come out that have got great qualifications and then can't find a job. And what you're finding there is just how important it is to have people skills. It's, your qualifications will get you so far, but ultimately people want to work with people they like and trust. And it's a really fine line, coming across as confident versus arrogant. Coming across as laid back versus I couldn't care less. I mean, finding that balance. And of course, you don't know the person's interviewing, you don't know what their buttons are ticking. So you could go in and be one way for one person, and they'll think, that's no way will I ever hire that person. You could be have exactly the same interview or say exactly the same thing to someone else. They love you. So your ability to read people and engage with people is so important. It really is. And there's a lot of stress finding a job, especially finding the right job. And then, being humble enough to take a job that you think is below you, just to get on the ladder as well. I've had to clean toilets. I had to go work in, restaurants. I've done all sorts of things. I've picked fruit when I've traveled around the world, taking up different jobs. Sometimes you need to eat a bit of humble pie as well, just to appreciate that, it's not easy sometimes. I mean, some of you will be lucky. You'll go straight into great jobs, but that's not always the case. And the world is changing very quickly right now. So that's why being an entrepreneur and being able to create your own job, or to even think about buying someone else's business, there's opportunities to acquire businesses where you don't need a lot of your own money. So if you find a distressed business that's looking to sell and to borrow money off their balance sheet, you could be a business owner without having to pay a penny. There's all sorts of possibilities out there, folks, and there's a lot of mental health issues around it. So expectation is what causes the problems there. So don't expect too much, stay humble, and really focus on your people skills as well. That's really, really important.
And that links quite nicely to the next question there, right? From Mohammed Alam. He talks about, how do you overcome getting bored and losing interest in a job?
Well, I was bored, and I did lose interest in a lot of jobs that I ended up in, and you can't avoid it. If it's a boring job and it's not your thing, then you're going to be bored. I think the single most important thing to me is to acknowledge You know, when I was in banking, my family were happy. I had a job that they absolutely loved. I would have earned good money, really good money, if I'd stayed there. But I was looking at people that had been there for over 20 years, and these people, they looked drained of energy and life. It was almost like you sell your soul to the devil, and then you get a mortgage subsidy, and so they couldn't afford to leave their jobs. You know, a lot of people reach middle age and realize they've got all these commitments, all these mortgage payments, all of these financial commitments, and they're stuck in a job that they hate. So just be sensitive. If you go into a job and after a few years, you're not feeling it, get out. That's what I would say. You know, be very careful about the financial commitments you take on too early, because they could come back and bite you. And that's how people get stuck in jobs. And that's the big source of mental health problems. People trapped like prisons in their jobs. So just be careful about that. You know, there's no way, if it's a rubbish job and you don't enjoy it, you're not going to be able to suddenly turn that around and make it a good job when it isn't. So just be aware that you might think you know what you want to do now, but you'll probably change your mind at some stage, and that's okay. It's okay, you know, to be able to reposition and go in a different direction. You know, just because you get on the conveyor belt in one profession doesn't mean you have to stay there.
Thanks a lot for that, Adam. And welcoming all the interaction. Next up, we have Andrea, who wants to go live and ask a question directly. Go for it, Andrea.
Let's do it.
Hello.
Hi, Andrea.
A little strange question, so I want to explain myself. Yeah, so where would you say that business and mental health or psychology meet each other? Maybe like in a discipline, in a concept, or the coaching, how, where? do you explain myself?
I'm not quite sure what you're asking there, Andrea. How do they all fit together? Well, they certainly do fit together. I mean, psychology and mental health. I mean, psychology is more the theory of it. Mental health is actually dealing, I suppose it's the difference between reading the book of how to drive and then actually driving the car. The two are theoretically in the same bracket, but they're both, you know, in actual fact, they're very different things. Not until you're dealing with real life situations and get the experience, you know, that's the main thing. And if you're a good friend and a good listener, you've already got your background. You know, a lot that I learned in mental health, I learned through helping my friends through difficult things way before I studied psychology or energy or personal development or anything like that. If you have high empathy and you're a good friend and a good listener, and listening, that's the single biggest, it's the single biggest skill that you'll need to cultivate. Because in business, a lot of people love to talk, like me, going on and on now, but listening, it's listening to other people that will make you magnetic in business. And how does that all link together? Well, if you're a good person and you care about other people, you'll go far, you'll do all right. But if you put their needs before your own, that's where it starts to go wrong. So it's getting that balance between being a good friend and listener and support, and prioritizing your own needs as well. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant.
And what's really interesting there as well is the whole aspect of, you know, psychology and understanding human behavior. So like what you're talking about in terms of the interviews and, you know, connecting with people and understanding what people are, you know, like preempting situations, or, you know, understanding how to connect with people on a more deeper level. That's something really interesting thought.
Yeah, it really is. It's all about people. Your business, your skills, your life, it will all be about all your ability to connect with people. And people who are like each other, they like each other. So common interests. You know, if you both like travel, you both like, you know, so maybe it's your taste in films or TV or what else, or travel. You might all be Breaking Bad fans, and that starts a conversation, and suddenly people light up because they're talking about stuff that they like. You know, when you find something that's common that you both like, that you both have an interest in, people will light up. And for me, when I'm connecting with people, I'm always looking for those connection points. I'm always looking for what is it that we have in common that we need to talk about. And once you talk about that, people light up, they change. They go from the business tone, I talk about my business. I see this a lot of times in business. They talk about the business. We are a bespoke accountancy firm of, because we go back 100 years, and I just think, God, I'm ready to slit my wrists. You say, look, tell me something interesting about yourself. And then it turns out, that they're classic car collectors, and they drive around Europe in these cars and do all these mad things. And now suddenly I'm interested. Now it's interesting. I'm getting a piece of you, not the masked version that you think you have to be when you're promoting your business. Be real. That's really important. Certainly is for me. Not everybody follows that philosophy, but the more you are, the more you stay true to yourself, the more you keep who you are, and you look for common interests with people, then you'll go a long way. It's a great skill to cultivate, for sure.
Amazing. Thanks a lot for that, Andrea, and Adam as well. And next up we have Brady. Brady, I can see your question there, but do you want to ask it live? Go for it. Unmute yourself and go for it.
Right. Hi, Adam. Thanks for the presentation thus far. I've got to find my question. I wrote it away back.
I'm getting slow. I'm going to have to speed up my answers.
All
I can see. I'm running out of time. Oh, no. It's easy to do.
So basically, considering the current climate with a lot of digital and remote working, how has that changed business creation, funding requests, and then the relationships that go along with it? You've sort of touched on that already, but more thinking about things as they are now and the trend that in a lot of ways it's going to continue to be.
Well, I think it's I think it's sort of evened things out. I mean, I had an events-based business before this, so it was devastating for me, the whole COVID thing, and it has been to other business owners. And what I find is that when I speak to people, you're sharing their journey, and we offer help and support, to each other. So it's encouraging people, to be more real. I mean, and also having to work from home all of that time, you've got the family in the background, the cat walks across the Zoom call and the next thing. I mean, for me, I love that. I love that realness that comes with it. It's almost like the masks are off because people are having to present from home. So it's been massively challenging. To answer your question, it's been massively challenging, but there's also, for the right people with the right focus, could be massively rewarding as well. This is a chance to connect with people, to have real conversations, and to explore real business synergies that could be win-win for everybody.
Amazing. And next up, we have Julian. It's a bit of a personal question alongside some general advice in there as well. So Julian's asking, he's having some difficulty balancing his time between running his own business and attending university, so fulfilling, the requirements at university in terms of assessment. So he's prioritizing university at the expense of his business. And he's wondering, like, if you had any advice on how to better manage his time and alongside avoiding, feeling burnt out. So like, what mental health related advice could you provide for Julian and obviously to others as well?
Well, there's working hard and working smart, Julian. And for me, if I'm feeling that burnt out or frazzled, I take a time out, and if that's watching a couple of episodes of a box set or watching a film or just chilling out or going for a walk, it's so important. Because if you're feeling drained and you're thinking, I just need to put my time into, I need more time, then how productive is that time? It could actually start working against you. So prioritize your well-being, take that time out, go for a walk, because you just can't concentrate. The stats will tell you that. If you're sat in front of a screen for a certain period of time, your productivity just starts to dip. So, if you're feeling guilty, doing it out of guilt rather than doing it because, right, I'm ready, I'm energized, I'm going for it right now, then, that could be counterproductive. So my personal advice would be always take time out for your well-being. If you're feeling drained or de-energized, just get out and go for a walk, even as a minimum thing. Just disconnect. Because if you disconnect even for 5 minutes, go for a walk around or just do something else and then come back, you press the reset button and you may see things from a different perspective. But if you can feel your energy waning while you're spending time there, it's not going to get any better. You know, and I think it's almost like this guilt. I have to do it. I have to do it. Well, work smart, not hard. You know, you can do both, but that doesn't mean that you have to spend, you know, every hour of every day either doing university or business, you know, go easy on yourself there. And also maybe bring someone else in, share your business idea. You might want to increase your team. There could be potential there. So, you know, entrepreneurs, they think differently, they think smarter, and whether you can outsource anything or you can get other people involved, that might be the case, it might not, but definitely consider it.
And I'll throw a couple of pennies into the pot there as well. Yeah, prioritize as well. Like, you know, let the pendulum swing between both these things that you're pursuing. And you know, certain elements would have priorities that are more immediate than others. So work, yeah, definitely. That's a great piece of advice. Work hard, work smart. Great one. And then the next question relates more to someone who has some learning difficulties. So in terms of some medical advice, maybe in terms of if they are feeling practically strong, so they're strong in terms of hands-on doing activity, but they're the weaker in terms of the theoretical underpinning of that knowledge. What advice could you give them?
Okay. So let's have a look. Well, for a start, working as an electrician for 2 years, that's always a great profession to have. And not just because you're always going to need electricians, but it comes in handy when you've got your own electrical problems, and it makes you magnetic in the neighborhood. So let me just reread that question so that, let me see, how do I overcome learning difficulties? She's letting me down. I'm interested in working in a research field. Let's see. Work really hard to understand and complete my assignments. The theoretical side is weak, the practical side is strong. Well, do you know what? Not everybody is a fit for the academic world. Some people, they go out, they use practical skills and they do really, really well for themselves. Now, if building is your thing, if architecture is your thing, if plumbing, electricians, there will always be a need for electricians. It's actually a lot less stressful for plumbers and electricians because there's always consistent work for them. So don't try and put the round plug in the square hole because it won't work. You know, if your skill set is practical, then embrace it. Embrace it. You're lucky. You know, that's your skill set. It's the Albert Einstein quote. You know, if you spend a whole if you judge a fish by its ability to climb trees, it'll spend its whole life thinking it's stupid. Not everybody is academically inclined. That's not the way of the world. You know, different strokes for different folks. We all have different superpower skills. To make it more sort of modern and recent, you know, it's a bit like Superman getting pissed off and lying down on the therapy couch because he can't spin webs. You know, we've each got our own individual superhero skills. You just have to own yours and stop comparing yourself to other people with different skill sets.
Amazing, thanks. And Navpreet, she asks a more specific question, possibly touching on some of your experience previously having traveled. Like, how much money would you suggest you need, maybe as a minimum, to be able to travel and backpack?
Well, it depends how adventurous you are. It really does. I mean, if you're going to a kibbutz or something like that, you'll need less money because a lot of it's there. It's almost like a working holiday. Same with Camp America. I mean, I'm going back a few years now, but I used to try and get a hold of at least £2,000 and always bring a credit card so you can get your flight home. My favorite thing was to buy a one-way flight to travel until my money ran out and then come back. And when I went to Brazil, it looked like I was going to have 3 weeks, but I met some local people from Rio de Janeiro and I ended up traveling with them. And I told them, look, here's my budget. I've got £2,000. When the money goes, I go back to the UK. First thing they did, we went out, we bought some tents, and then they took me around Brazil, staying with their friends and family. I got fed, I got places. I mean, it was phenomenal. So what would have probably been a 3-week trip turned into a 3-month trip. So there's no real rules, but the more the merrier. The more you can get, the better it'll be. So I'd say You know, we're going back a few years when I had 2,000. So let's say 3,000 would be a good, you know, but it depends where you go. If you're going to America, it'd be more expensive than if you go to Southeast Asia. So do your research. You know, if it's a tight budget, go to a country where it costs less. Do your research. Places down in South America, you know, there's certain countries where the money will go a lot further. So the same amount of money in Southeast Asia when I was traveling would last, you know, it was weeks for months. If I was traveling in the Western world, 1 week, what it cost me there, I could live for 1 month in Southeast Asia. So it depends where you go, is the answer to that question.
Amazing. And Jerusa asks, how would you overcome anxiety and become more confident in terms of your work?
That's a good question, a really good question. And it's really just repetition. I mean, if we're talking about anxiety, I usually address this question with public speaking. I mean, I would say underdo something, your breathing controls your mood all the time. Enter some sort of breathing practice, whether that's yoga, meditation, mindfulness. Notice how your breathing affects your mood. Your breathing, this is so simple. The deeper you breathe, the more relaxed you become. And the more you practice, the easier it gets. And I could say more, but it really is that simple. Find something, a practice that involves you becoming very aware of your breathing, whether that's meditation, yoga, or just mindfulness, going walking, and work on it. You know, anxiety can be controlled because the more shallow your breath gets, the more anxious you become. The deeper your breathing gets, the more relaxed you become. So that's the very simple answer to that. Practical application isn't quite so easy.
Definitely. And that's a really valid what's it called piece of advice. A lot of people give that advice as well in terms of when people feel nervous before giving a presentation, or to lower the heart rate, etc. Yeah, brilliant. And I'll give you the final question there, Adam. It's one from myself, just touching back on funding, and maybe just if you could give us a summary in terms of like an overview of how you would go about setting up a business. Most of the audience here are like designers, design engineers. They'll have ideas at some point towards the end of their studies, in the middle of their studies, or later on as they start their careers. So how would you go about setting up a business? What would you need to do, the types of investments that they can seek, and how easy are the various routes?
Well, that's a good question. There's a lot of funding routes available, Ahmed, and I'd start with anyone. Look at what grant funding is available out there. There's EU funding. There's funding from lots of different sources. If you go for investment from a traditional investment route, you'll traditionally be giving away a lot of equity in your business. You want to start your business going, giving away as little equity as possible, and that really is exploring grant funding as a first step forward. So that's what I'd say. Go look at what grants are available. But what I will say before I log off, which I realize I need to do fairly soon, is if any of you have got any more questions or want to follow up with this, I'm more than happy to continue the conversation or look at your proposals and give you some feedback and maybe point you in the right direction when it comes to certain funding streams as well.
That's amazing. Thanks a lot, Adam. All of you guys, thanks a lot for tuning in on this Thursday evening. You do have Adam's contact details that was circulated by email alongside his social media connections. So feel free to connect with Adam on LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter as well. A fantastic offer from Adam, to be able to, look over your business proposals as well. So definitely make use of that. Adam has a lot of experience in this domain. And a final comment from Luigi. He said, "Thank you, Adam. By far the most relatable and useful guest lecturer in a while, in his opinion. You did a really great job of connecting with us, offering meaningful advice." So thanks a lot, Adam, from all of us at Middlesex University, product design engineering, and design engineering. And yeah, thanks a lot. And
thank you. You made me blush. I might not be able to get my head out the door after that one, but it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks very much. And a big shout out to you, Ahmed and Touts, for inviting me along. It's been great fun, and very much look forward to seeing your proposals, and wish you all the very best in the future.
Cheers. Thanks a lot, Adam. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam, so much.